What's up, everybody? How are we doing today? It's your boy NBA Hotspot 123, and this is my first ever YouTube video that I'm doing. As you guys know, I hope. If you don't, I have an Instagram that's the exact same handle as my YouTube channel, and this is my first ever video, so I'm hype. Right now, I feel like it's only fitting that for the first video, I gotta rep my team. The Knicks hat, the Knicks jersey, and I'm low-key wearing some boxers right now. But yeah, I wanted to talk about what's going on in this offseason so far, revolving around everything that's happened since the championship, and that's including the NBA draft. So we're going to get into a lot of stuff today. I'm hyped. I'm excited. Not going to lie, before I start, I want to shout out King of the Fourth Quarter, Kenny Beecham. I've been watching him since I was in like 5th grade, like genuinely, since he was doing those NBA quizzes. I have a YouTube channel, another one from when I was a kid, and I would post like reactions to his videos and like do quizzes like he did. So shout out to Kenny Beecham, you're the GOAT. I still watch his videos to this day. I just love basketball. So yeah, I'm wearing a hat right now though, especially because my hair's a mess. I need a haircut, but let's get into it. So first off, we have to talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo getting traded to the Miami Heat. And honestly, we all saw this coming, this trade. This was going to happen at some point in the offseason. But frankly, I don't like this trade at all for the Miami Heat. Pat Riley is a great GM, don't get me wrong. But there are a lot of reasons as to why the Heat shouldn't be, or Heat fans shouldn't be too proud of this trade, because at the end of the day, you're still getting Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm just gonna say Giannis, but you're still getting Giannis. And sure, like he's a 2-time MVP, 1 DPOI. He's only 31, which isn't that crazy, but here's where it gets bad. Maybe not bad, but here's where it gets tough. So Giannis is 31, and he'll be 32 in like the middle of the season-ish, which isn't old, and a guy in his physique and his, physical shape and how well he plays when he is healthy is amazing to see. But frankly, Giannis hasn't had a truly healthy season since the 2023 season, and that was, at this point, almost 4 years ago. 2024, he missed the playoffs. 2025, he didn't play a lot of the regular season, and then he came back for the playoffs. And not much happened because he just got implemented into the lineup, and the team wasn't even that good to begin with. And on top of that, going into 2026, he was dealing with a calf issue the whole time. So him only being 31 isn't bad, but the fact that since he was been about 28, 29, he's been dealing through these injuries, it's a bit of a red flag if you're a Miami Heat fan. And I think Milwaukee got an amazing package in return for Giannis. And I'm going to go through it right now. So Giannis got sent to Miami. No Thanasis, unfortunately. But Giannis got sent to Miami with his boy Bobby Portis. Shout out Bobby Portis, because Bobby Portis is a winner. He is a winner. So that's a good piece to have. But Milwaukee got a lot of good stuff in return here. So they got Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Kel'el Ware, this guy, Kasparas Jakunas, I don't know who that is, but he's a 2025 first-round guard from the draft. And they got the 13th overall pick from this draft, who ended up being Nate Ament. And from what I've seen, from what I've heard from him, I don't watch too much college ball, but this guy seems pretty good. He's a 6'10 big that can shoot, which is what you want to stretch the floor. They already have that in Miles Turner, so adding that guy, Nate Ament, a rookie, into the mix is going to be great for Milwaukee. They already have depth with Kel'el Ware at the big spot. So they have a lot of good bigs coming this year. And then they have Jaime Jaquez and Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero is definitely going to lead the way for the team. I mean, I think he's the only all-star on the team right now, technically. I think he's the only former all-star. I don't think he made the all-star team this past season. But he has made the all-star team before. He's still only like 26 years old, which is crazy. And he'll definitely be the guy who has the keys, especially since he's running guard. But you get Nate Ament. They also drafted Braden Burries, who is another guard that can crash the boards, shoot, facilitate, and he has a very, very high IQ. That's like literally what he's known for. Braden Burries is known for his high IQ, facilitation, and then he can shoot and crash the boards. He has bounce. And on top of that, they get the 2030 pick, first round pick swap, 2031 unprotected first round pick, and the 2033 first round pick and second round pick, unprotected, but those are a lot of picks right there. And if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm happy with this. If I'm a Bucks fan, I'm low-key excited this season to see where we can go. Not we, but they can go. I'm a Knicks fan. But I'm really interested to see what happens with this Bucks team, because this is not a bad team. Like, this team, just like seeing this, could definitely make a decent push in the playoffs. Definitely better off, as crazy as it sounds, without Giannis. Because I feel like what happens with these stars who get traded, they get traded for a million players, a million picks. And what happens is the team that they ended up going to, and I feel like this is a very big pattern with someone like Kevin Durant, where we've seen now twice, like once, but kind of twice, I'd say more so in Phoenix, where he gets traded to the Suns for a lot from Brooklyn, and then he goes to Phoenix, and they just don't have that much depth. As we saw when he went there, nothing much happened. That first year he was there was probably their best chance, given they had Chris Paul. But then once he got injured and then he left the team, it was wrapped for Phoenix. And they didn't even make the playoffs the last year he was there. So that's an example of that. I can't think of other ones on the top of my head, but like there are definitely more examples that you can think of just star guys getting dealt for loads and loads of draft picks and players, and then the team has no depth, and the star player he isn't as good, maybe, carrying the whole team by himself, and injuries can pile up. So you really can't tell the future with the Miami Heat right now. But honestly, I think Milwaukee won this trade. I really do think they won this trade, and I'm happy to see where things are going to go for them. So Giannis next season is owed $58.5 million, and he holds a $62.8 million player option the year after in 2028. So right now, he's going to be in Miami for at least 2 seasons. At least. At least 1 season. I believe that it meant for the 2028 season, not after. So he's in Miami for at least 1 season. And how they do in that season is going to be very important and crucial for his decision-making for the season after. If I had to guess, he probably would resign. It'd be kind of crazy if they sent that whole package away just to have 1 year of Giannis. And if I'm being honest, they're probably not winning the chip. That's my guess. Yeah, I think that if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, this is honestly probably the best you could have gotten for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And it's funny because, finally he got traded, because I think Giannis has been in trade rumors for what's felt like almost 3 years at this point. Ever since he won the chip, I feel like there's been, the rumors have just been piling up for Giannis's departure. And 5 years later, post championship, it happened. He's gone. He's out of Milwaukee, and it's a little sad to see what ended up going. How his progression after the championship ended up being, because it was after they won, they were still a very good team, but I feel like their downfall began when they traded away Drew Holiday, and at that point in time when they got Dame, things just weren't the same. And then I think that even when they did have Dame, they still weren't bad. But when they ended up signing Doc Rivers as their coach, that's when everything just came crashing down. And then they became a mediocre team who were a first-round exit at best. And on top of that, Giannis just wasn't healthy, and neither was Dame for those 2 years they were together. And last year was just for lack of a better term, shit show for Milwaukee. So, yeah, I think that this trade needed to happen. It's good that they let it happen and waited until the offseason, because they wouldn't have had this at the trade deadline if they traded him. If Milwaukee ended up trading him at the deadline, they wouldn't have had all this luxury. But yeah, so Milwaukee Bucks, great stuff. Seriously, this is a lot of good stuff for your future. They have 2 very, very promising rookies, and they have a lot of young guys. I mean, Tyler Hero is an all-star guard who's 26 years old. I believe he's 26. Let me just check. Tyler Hero age. He's 26. He'll be 27 midway through the season. Still very young. Jaime Jaquez is in his early to mid-20s. He was a Sixth Man of the Year candidate. Kel'el Ware is like 22 or 21. He's like barely older than me. So this is a very young and promising team that can definitely make some good pushes in the next few seasons. So yeah, to end off on that note, Milwaukee fans, you should be happy with this. I think this is a good start post Giannis era. A lot of teams kind of just after their star guy leaves, like when LeBron left. I mean, he didn't get traded. He signed there to Miami in 2010, but that team imploded, and then they imploded again after he left the second time. So the fact that you're able to trade a guy like Giannis away instead of having him walk and sign with another team without getting anything in return is great. So kudos to Milwaukee there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Miami until I move on to my next topic, but I'm looking at the roster right now, and this team has no bench. Zero bench. And to my point from earlier, you need to have a good bench to make a deep playoff run. You cannot rely on your starting five. As a Knicks fan, I can 1,000% stand behind that statement because in a Tom Thibodeau era, having a starting five and not playing your bench is going to wear the starters down like you've never seen before. I remember 2024, 7-man rotation, and nothing was going our way in the second round. Injury after injury after injury after injury. That is not a sustainable way to play basketball, especially in the playoffs and especially in a guy like Tom Thibodeau. Granted, they have Eric Spoelstra, who is a better coach than Tom Thibodeau. But with that being said, if you don't have a good bench, then what can you do really? So I think for Miami, they need to prioritize just getting an okay bench, because God forbid one of their players in the starting five goes down, and then you have to just bring up a guy, and then who knows what can happen after that. So Milwaukee's definitely going to be a team to look out for, but I think Miami is going to have a very interesting season coming up for them. But with that being said, I think that both of these teams are honestly looking towards the playoffs. But I think Miami is like more of a win now situation. Granted, Giannis is 31, still in his prime, of course, still like a top 3 player when he does play. But when can he be available for this team? So they're in like a 2-year window right now with Giannis on just trying to just go balls to the walls to win that chip or make a finals push, especially in a stacked Eastern Conference, because the Knicks are tough. Tyrese is coming back for the Pacers. The Celtics are always going to be a threat. The Pistons are trying to get guys around Cade. I'm going to talk about the trade that they just did like 30 minutes ago. But yeah, let's move on though. Let's move on from the Giannis talk. Crazy trade though, of course. All right, moving on though. Let's go to our next topic. And that topic is a trade that I believe happened before the Giannis one, if I'm not mistaken, and that is a former Knick and Julius Randle getting traded to the Brooklyn Nets. So I have a lot of respect for Julius Randle as a player, especially as a Knicks fan. If you were there during the dark days as a Knicks fan, you know how much Julius Randle impacted the Knicks franchise for the better. Him and Tom Thibodeau came in. I think Randle came in the year before. Yeah, he came in 2020. Excuse me, for the 2020 season. The Knicks were ass. We sucked that year. Mitchell Robinson was there. Shout out you. Big country. But Randle came in, and Thibodeau came in the year after, and after that, it was like the progression. And then Brunson came along, and then that's when things really started going uphill for us. But Julius Randle was there for the dark days, and I respect him a lot for helping make New York relevant again. He set the ground for that. He signed with the Knicks that offseason in 2019, and at the time, we were all like, this sucks. I still remember to this day Julius Randle going to the Knicks in 2019, and people saying that the Knicks got the unathletic version of Zion Williamson because we missed out on Zion in the draft and got RJ Barrett, and then we didn't sign Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and then settled for Julius Randle. And I remember that every Knicks fan, including myself, were like, this is going to be like a never-ending like pain as a Knicks fan. Just seeing everyone else go to other teams and the Knicks just stay bad, but it all worked out in the end. it was all a blessing in disguise. So shout out to Julius Randle for that. But yeah, so Julius Randle goes back to New York, but this time is in Brooklyn. And he goes to Brooklyn along with the number 28th overall pick in the draft. I actually don't know who the 28th pick in the draft was. I have to double check. So yeah, it says here Julius Randle and Joshua Jefferson, who was a 28th overall pick, are going to Brooklyn. Good reviews on Joshua Jefferson. Again, I don't know anything about college basketball. Like, I don't know much outside of like the top 5 picks. I'm very casual when it comes to college basketball, but he has very good reviews. Playmaking, defense. You know, he's a 6'9" forward, very athletic, 240 pounds, relentless rebounder, and he has improved his outside shooting. So good stuff there for Brooklyn. But Minnesota in turn receives the number 30, the 33rd overall pick, and Muhammadu Gay, who eventually got waived. So and then Nick Claxton, who's a longtime Net. I think he was there before. I want to say he got there right when KD and Kyrie got there that same year. So he was in Brooklyn for a while. He got to see like the bright, good days with KD and Kyrie and Harden. And then once those guys left, it was just Brooklyn just wasn't the same. And they were like one of the worst teams this year. So he gets to see 2 completely opposite worlds of Brooklyn. And I think a total of 5 years he was there for. So that era is over. Might resume at some point later on in his career, but we'll see. But for now, he's going to the Bulls. Shout out Nick Claxton. But yeah, I want to talk about Julius Randle a little bit and why this trade ultimately happened. So with Julius Randle, I think the biggest issue with a guy like him is just the inconsistencies that he brings on offense. And trust me, as a Knicks fan, as much as I appreciate what he did for the franchise, there were a lot of very frustrating moments watching a player like Julius Randle play. Number one, he didn't really have like a true playoff run with the Knicks. So when he got to Minnesota, that was when we really got to see him do his thing in the playoffs. And last year, I think he had a good year in the playoffs. He really stepped up, especially in that Lakers series. And they went to the conference finals. But it felt like that Minnesota just wasn't at that level of like truly contending for a championship. They were a good team, but how can they be a great team? So they ran it back this year with the same roster pretty much and tried to see where things could go. They had a good deadline where they traded for Ayo Dosunmu, so they had some bench depth there. And then the playoffs come around, they're doing well. And then Dante DiVincenzo obviously tears his Achilles. Very unfortunate injury. Shout out him, amazing Nick for that 1 year. But you go into the playoffs and then you see Julius Randle and he just isn't performing. And I think when you have a guy like Anthony Edwards and you know that he needs that second guy to step up for him, obviously Rudy Gobert is a good player, but he isn't like a star guy who's going to get you buckets. He's going to get you rebounds and play good defense and catch some lobs, and that's about it. You need a guy who can go out there, who they pretty much expected Julius Randle to be, and just get buckets and help out Anthony Edwards. Kind of like a Karl Anthony Towns to the Jalen Brunson, like the Kyrie Irving to the LeBron James, like the Anthony Davis to the LeBron James, if you will. And Julius Randle was not that. Not even close in this playoff run. So ultimately, after a disappointing second round exit, even though the Spurs are a great team, you kind of can tell that this team isn't a championship type of roster and that things need to be changed. And the first people that everyone looked at was Julius Randle. So with that, what happens next with the Timberwolves? And that ultimately led to his departure. I'm not going to lie, going to the Brooklyn Nets is a tough thing at this point because they're not a good team. And Julius Randle is in his prime. He's 31. He's been playing well. Probably the best basketball of his career the past 3 or so years. And this is a little tough. This is definitely tough for him. But the good thing is that he can just eat now and just get buckets and, try to carry and be the leader for this young Nets team. It's pretty brutal to like go from, this contender with this good Minnesota team and then getting traded to a team like Brooklyn. It's actually very similar to the Michael Porter Jr. situation, and he's currently on that team too. So they can both thug it out over there. But with that being said, um, it's gonna be a interesting year for Julius Randle. I'm interested to see what happens with him, especially at this point in his career. Moving on to our second to last topic, and I want to be quick with this because I do want to talk about the Celtics situation right now with Jaylen Brown. But the Grizzlies and Pistons just made a trade that sent Isiah Stewart to Detroit, or sorry, from Detroit to Memphis in exchange for 3 future second round picks. And this is a good trade for Detroit. As crazy as it is to trade a guy like Big Stu, who's like a very big culture guy, as hot-headed as he is, and as many fights that he picks, he really embodies that Detroit mindset, style of basketball. Back to the bad boy Pistons era. But yeah, the Pistons had to do something, right? This isn't a team right now that can just ride and see what happens with, with all due respect to Tobias Harris, having Tobias Harris as your number 2 guy. That cannot happen if you want to win a championship. Tobias Harris cannot be the number 2 guy, especially since he's starting to get a little older, on your team. You just can't have that happen. You cannot have that happen, especially when a guy like Jalen Duren is underperforming in the playoffs. You cannot have a guy like Cade Cunningham carrying the load by himself to lose in the second round every single season. So something had to get done. And the Pistons they're off to a good start right now in this offseason. They cleared Stewart's $30 million contract to ultimately help shape the roster around Cade. And what I think they should prioritize is definitely, without a doubt, finding a second guy to help out Cade, a second ball handler, because when you watch the Pistons play basketball in a playoff series, it is so evident that if Cade isn't having a good night, then you're going to win the game because they have literally nobody else to carry that load off of Cade. So Cade had to have a damn near perfect performance every single night in the playoffs to give the Pistons a good shot at winning. Not even guarantee a win, but give them a good chance at winning, because he had some good games against Orlando and Cleveland, and there were games that he would perform very well and they would still lose the game. And if he didn't perform well, then they're definitely losing that game. And with that, they scraped through a Magic team that was up 3-1 on them, and then Franz got injured and they were able to come back down from 3-1. But against a better team like Cleveland, it was evident that you can't have that type of play style in the playoffs, just relying on one guy. That's like what the Cavs did with LeBron for like 7 years, and he couldn't even win a ring with them. So the Pistons can't have that type of roster construction around Cade because it isn't sustainable, and he won't win, and they won't win with that. So good start here, clearing Stewart's contract, going towards a guy who can definitely help out Cade, and overall roster construction. So yeah. And moving on to our final topic, we have the Boston Celtics, which in my opinion is probably one of the most interesting, controversial things that is going to end up happening in this offseason. And that starts with them ultimately putting Jaylen Brown in a trade package that included Giannis. Ultimately, the Bucks said no, went with the trade with Miami, which probably was a better trade to get depth and picks and all that good stuff. You need that. And if I'm the Bucks, I would have done the same thing. But if I'm the Celtics, what are you guys doing? I'm not too sure on their financial state right now, because I know they had a pretty rough financial state after last season, which is why a lot of their core guys left, because they passed that second apron. But I don't get why Boston is treating Jaylen Brown this way. Sure, you lost in the first round to Philly, but let's not forget the story of the Celtics this season. They shouldn't even have been in the playoffs, if we're being honest. But Jaylen Brown stepped up big time and showed everyone why he arguably could have won the MVP this season. Simple as that. He could have 1,000% won that MVP this season, because everybody had Boston as like a play-in team, or like a team that would like barely squeak in to the top 6. They were the 2 seed. They had a better record than the Knicks. And mind you, Jason Tatum didn't play until I believe it was like the final 10 games of the season or something like that. So the fact that you have Jaylen Brown, specifically in a season where he's coming in, you lose Al Horford, Drew Holiday, Luke Cornett, and Kristaps Porzingis, 4 guys from the core that won the championship just 2 years ago. The year prior, if we're talking about last year, Jaylen Brown comes in. Not only do other guys step up, but he steps up, and he's that star guy, and they just win a bunch of games. And when Tatum comes back, they keep winning games. They end up being the 2 seed. And all of a sudden, you want Giannis, who, not to mention, it's older than Jaylen Brown, and as good as Giannis is better than Jaylen Brown. Sure. But one thing about Giannis is that right now, he cannot stay healthy. Jaylen Brown, with as much load he had on his back all season long, didn't get injured once. He played the entire season phenomenally and also played the whole playoffs. I mean, it was only 7 games for them, but he showed up and he showed out. And I think for Boston to be so quick on moving on from a guy like him and getting Giannis, sure, it's Giannis, okay, it's gonna happen, but let's not forget that Jaylen Brown has been on this team for 10 years now, and he's grown so much, and Boston literally won a championship with him as the finals MVP. So I just can't believe the Celtics would do something like this, because now, even with Giannis being on a different team, they're still actively shopping Jaylen Brown. I don't know if it's because of his contract, if there's something I'm missing, but I feel like letting go of a guy like Jaylen Brown is very, very disappointing to see from a franchise like the Celtics, especially given Brad Stevens coached Jaylen Brown when he was young, has seen Jaylen Brown progress as a GM, saw him win a championship, win Finals MVP, have the best year of his career literally just this past year, all to just shop him and ruin what the Celtics could have done for the next few years, because Brown and Tatum are still 29 and 28. They're both in their primes. They're both MVP candidates when they're both healthy. And it's just very disappointing to see that he might not be a Celtic next year. Yeah, I don't even know where he would go. They haven't even started exploring trade packages for Jaylen Brown, because this is so new and so unexpected out of Brad Stevens and the Celtics organization. But yeah, also on top of that, I think that what the Celtics have to improve is not the guys on their team, because obviously they had depth. Neemias Queta and Jordan Walsh stepped up huge this year after being bench warmers last year. Peyton Pritchard is an amazing player. They definitely lack a little more depth than they do in the years prior when they had, the championship core. But I think the issue with the Celtics isn't the guys on their team. I think it's the way their offenses ran. They should 1,000% beat a team like Philly. And I'm not going to get into this too much. This can be a separate video. But the fly and die 3-point method is something that, with a team as talented as the Celtics, should not be done, because Joe Mazzulla needs to realize how talented JT and JB are, and utilize the offense to its full potential, not just settle for 3-pointers left and right, and live with the consequences if you just keep missing them, because that's literally how they lost to Philly. They shot themselves out of the series by just missing 3 after 3 after 3 after 3. They lost that series solely off of Joe Mazzulla's game plan, and I think that trading Jaylen Brown isn't even that's the opposite of what you need to do right now. That's not going to solve anything, in my opinion, unless they get amazing stuff for him. But why would you do that? You can totally win with this roster. Maybe add a couple, minimum veteran contract pieces like the Knicks did. But I don't know. But with that being said, this is going to be a long first video, but it's exciting stuff. So yeah, first video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. NBA Hotspot. See you in the next one. Peace. Go Knicks. Knicks in 5. Knicks in 5, baby.